So good afternoon and welcome to what is probably the most important event of the COP, although people don't know it yet, but they soon will. This is the meeting on the European Fund for Sustainable Development Guarantee Facility for Sustainable Cities. And this facility has been designed by United Nations Capital Development Fund and the European Union. And we will shortly have with us Margetta Jager, who is the Deputy Director General of INTPA at the European Commission, who is really one of the people who is leading this work. But I'm going to start with the presentation, and then we will ask the Deputy Director General to make some comments when she arrives. So if you could go to the next slide, please. Do you have the slides? Yeah. Okay, 1 second. Yes, so we'll start with an overview and then look at the objectives, approach, the advisory council, and some practical examples. So next slide, please. Very well indeed. Thank you. How are you? So welcome to so we have the full house. Welcome, Margetta. I'm just going to make a few opening remarks and then give you the floor, allow you to get your breath back. So essentially, just to give you an overview of what this is about. So there is an initial tranche of 154 million euros. It is available for Africa and Southeast Asia, and it will include the guarantees and technical assistance through the Cities Bridge dual key pipeline. And the objective is to drive at least 9 demonstration projects that will then be replicable by the market. And key partners in this are, of course, the European Union, Swedish CEDA, United Cities and Local Governments, United Cities and Local Governments Africa, UN Habitat, and ICLEI. Next slide, please. So this is really the segue for the introduction to Margetta. So really this initiative, the Guarantee Facility for Sustainable Cities, is a product of a lot of thinking. There was a report that came out in 2020, the Financing Sustainable Urban Development Report, commissioned by, I believe, the European Parliament, issued by the European Commission and UN Habitat. And I was privileged to sit on the advisory council of that report, together with colleagues from EIB and other entities. And one of the recommendations of this EU UN Habitat report is there should be a guarantee facility for cities. Why? Because we identified the main problem that we need to solve. It's not possible for a country to borrow on its balance sheet the MDB funding required for sustainable urbanization, especially in given that urbanization is increasing in many parts of the world, in particular Africa, and in other places, Southeast Asia, where there's already been a lot of urbanization, the green transition is very expensive. We must fund the green transition to green cities. So how then to unlock the capital and find a way to have domestic transactions in local currencies, maybe on domestic capital markets, leveraging institutions like subnational development banks, like PTSMI from Indonesia we have here today, others from Africa. We're talking to Development Bank of Southern Africa, that can then bring in the private sector at the national level to transformative projects around SDG 11 and 13. So providing a third pillar. You have the private sector, you have the sovereign, now a kind of local government, a subnational pillar to the financial system. This recommendation was taken up in a later publication called Local Government Finances Development Finance, which really built out the thinking around the need for a guarantee facility for sustainable cities. And around the time that these publications were being worked on, the European Union opened its European Fund for Sustainable Development call for proposals and included in it the possibility of a guarantee facility for cities. So having been part of this process, UNCDF applied and was fortunate to be given the positive opinion. And now we are in the process of bringing this to fruition. So later on, we will look at some of the concrete examples of the projects that can be financed. And we hear from 3 esteemed representatives about how this will be very important to them. We have the governor of Kisumu County in Kenya, who will talk from the local government perspective. We have the chief investment officer, the president of the PTSMI, which is a subnational investment bank in Indonesia, from the subnational development bank perspective. And we have His Excellency Lamin Dibba, who is the permanent representative of Gambia to the United Nations, that will talk from a country perspective of what this means. But before we bring those to the table and before we look at the pipeline, it's great pleasure. I'd like to introduce Marjeta Jager, the Deputy Director General of INPA at the European Commission, to make her remarks. And Marjeta, thank you so much for coming.
So, Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, so first, thank you very much to UNCDF for organizing this event. What a pleasure when I got the invite. And I think this is the best way how to mark. I hate this. How to mark the inclusion of the cities in the center of the COP discussion and the agenda for the first time. So I think that it's really time to celebrate together that fact. And basically, what we have realized in not only that study that David presented, but from many other sources, is that really we are facing a huge financial gaps when it comes to the cities, and really, I would say, increasingly, of course, in our developing countries and the partner countries. And we've been looking for innovative solutions, because we have realized that with the traditional grants and even loans, we will not get there. So that is the first guiding principle. And the second one, that with the public money, we will never achieve the goals. So that simply we don't have enough. So that we need to learn how to leverage and scale up the public part and also crowd in the private sector. So, and it's not that we love to work with banks, as you know, so much in the development world, but we had to learn, you know, how to tackle it. And that's why we are so happy today to present and celebrate this new approach and the new avenue for collaboration between the European Union and the UN Capital Development Fund. And as David said, it takes the form of the guarantee product that will allow us to unlock transformative investments in our partner countries. So you already said it's 154 of the guarantee. And basically, it's not only to tackle the low capacity to develop bankable projects, but it's also basically what we want is to have this ambitious approach that you presented to support the development of transformative infrastructure, because this is also what we need. So you will ask me why the UNCDF, because we have so many European partners, we have European preference, we have been working with the World Bank, IFC, and all other partners. But I will tell you that this is the first time that we are working with the UNCDF in such a guarantee instrument. And first of all, because we have a long-standing, excellent partnership with them, meaning that we appreciate its vast experience in finance. Also, we had the previous examples of excellent collaboration, like a local climate adaptive living facility, and it was proven to be a success. So what you have proposed as a guarantee product, which would basically be composed in de-risking subnational bonds. And also, it was also selected because of your capacity to attract long-term private funding. I mean, it's yet to be proven, but we have all the trust and confidence in you. And also, we selected this guarantee because we believe in its potential demonstration effect. So that this is like a pilot project that will scale up and that we can use it not only in Africa and in Asia, but around the world. So basically, we would start then with the sub-Saharan Africa, where the bonds are not yet reality, and we would really like to go into that territory. But also, what was astonishing, and we are huge bureaucracy, so we need time. So after the regulation is adopted, we need to put together all the processes, so it took time before we finally published the tender, so-called EFSD Plus, first tender of basically 605 billion of the capacity. And we were 4 times oversubscribed. So we put it under the 6 window, one was the city window. And we have selected then, I would say, 40 proposed investment projects, so-called PIPs. And one was, of course, David's one. And we selected around 20 implementing partners. So it was a huge competition, because we realized that the competition also, with the financial institutions and development banks is very healthy. So that we bring quality into occasion. And after the projects were selected by the operational board, so-called of the EFSD Plus, I mean, we have started the contracting procedure. We are still analyzing the pipeline, and what you presented, it's the 3-phase approach that we like, because we will also have a flexibility. So that means that once you see that the pipeline, for example, the first one that really attracted my attention was this water infrastructure green revenue bonds in the secondary cities in Tanzania. Yeah, that we believe it will be break it or make it, or make it or break it. And then also we presented, you remember very well, together in New York during the water conference, the blue peace bonds. And this is something that we should do along the Gambia River. And it's with a huge potential, and because also we'll be supporting the hydroelectric dams and the local investment, because this is a 360 approach. It's not only about the hard infrastructure, as we put in the global gateway. So it's a hard infrastructure, but it's also a soft investment. So in basically education, research, health, so we would like really to enhance the whole local community and do the added value for the communities. This is the additionality that we are looking for. So it's not only really about the tool, the guarantee, but it's the whole additionality. So the second phase that you proposed cover the number of countries from Gambia to Guinea that you just mentioned. And I think we have a minister here, so very happy to have you with us. And it's about cross-border project, because the cross-border and regional component is in our view of the essential value. And also with the Ghana transport project and Senegal gender sensitive urban infrastructure, because we all know that with developing urban infrastructure, we also empower women. If they go safely to the local public transport, you know, they can go to work, they can go to school. So we are basically building the whole infrastructure. And that's why we are absolutely supporting that. And the third phase should be Smart Green ASEAN Cities Program, but we will see, you know, how we develop the first two phases and then we go to the third one. So I explained to you a little bit what is EFSD. I mean, I can answer to some questions if there are some other interest, but otherwise I would conclude my opening remarks, sorry if I've been long, that it's not only about the guarantee, it's also a technical assistance. And this is something that you should remember. The whole guarantee comes with 11 million of the technical assistance. And basically this guarantee facility will cover markets which are not yet mature. And of course, we are not looking only to the beneficiary to be supported, but also in structuring the financial instrument, but also, I mean, in reforming the financial ecosystem. So it's also about the reforms, and we would be really looking forward to your support. So thank you for your partnership, your friendship, the cooperation. We are ready to go. I mean, we hope that we will conclude the negotiations for the guarantee agreement, let's say in the first half of next year. It will not be easy because we have a huge difficulties with the horizontal provisions, like, you know, money laundering or let's not go into that details, but hopefully we will overcome this struggle as well, and then celebrate maybe next year at the COP, the signature of this important, I would say, joint project for the benefit of all our partner countries. So in conclusions, we are proud to this new initiative, and it pushes the boundaries further. And my last call is to private sector. Please join us because we need more finance. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, Margetta, for that opening remarks, and thank you for your, I think, courage in addressing this issue, because it's something which we all recognize needs to be done, and it's an area where I think the European Commission is leading, and it's an area where Europe can lead. And if we can show that this can work, I think we're truly building an ecosystem for local finance that is needed. And if you look at how other parts of the world have made the transition, if you look at a European city, most cities with 400,000 people already have public transport, a tramway system. You look at a country like Bangladesh, many cities with over 1 million people, the public transport is not yet there. Without this kind of facility, it's not going to be possible to install that kind of green infrastructure that we need for the transition. So thank you so much indeed, and really looking forward. And I can announce a couple of things, which is that this has been discussed at the highest level within the UN, and I think there's going to be a mission at some point in January from the head of UNCDF together with the financial controllers to really give some heavy weight into the negotiations. So we from our side, we really want to give our full weight behind it, so get it up and running, and we're accelerating the transactions as well. So I'm now going to show you some of the projects that are coming forwards, so we can make this a concrete discussion, and then I'll invite our esteemed guests to speak. So is it possible to go back to the presentation where it was? So if you go back to the one with the pictures on where we left off. Is that the one before it? Yeah, great. Okay, so now next slide, just so we're in the right order. Thank you. So the whole thing will benefit from this pipeline management process, which is a seamless process. We're working with ICLEI and other partners on this, and it includes technical assistance, reimbursable grants, concessional loans, the guarantees, and access to a variety of financiers. Because what we found out is that a city has a problem it wants to solve. It doesn't, you have to address that problem. How can you make that problem financeable? On the terms of the city and on the terms of the problem, not on the terms of this or that or the other bank. So you have to start off from what the problem you want to solve and build a financial model from there and send it to wherever it needs to get to, rather than say, this are our terms, answer these terms or you're out. So we have already done that. Next slide, please. So the objectives of the facility, I think, have already been very well outlaid. So we can maybe quickly move through these slides because I'm sure you want to get to the practical example. Maybe on the first one, this will operate as an instrument of the Malaga Policy Coalition, of which the European Union is very closely engaged, for a financial ecosystem that works for cities and local governments. So it'll be an objective of a policy coalition, which is a special part of it. Not all the elements of EFSD Plus have this kind of policy drive. The rest, I think, Margetta has very ably explained. The next slide, please. The approach, the next slide. So it will support transactions in secondary cities to pilot innovative financing solutions, pipeline of sub-sovereign projects. 4 really important elements: local bond markets, innovative structures, defray the sovereign contingent liability, lower risks and crowd-in investments. I'm not going to take a deep dive into those, but they are there and we can answer questions later. Next slide, please. The Advisory Council. Next slide. So one thing that makes this unique is there's an advisory council. Currently, UN Habitat, European Union, UCLG and UNCDF sit on the council. That is the first meeting of the council, which was held at the margin of the UN Habitat Assembly in March. The second meeting of the council was held on the 3rd of December here at COP, and the European Union was represented by the water team, UCLG by their Secretary General Emilia Sayers, and UN Habitat by the Chief of Staff, who is Neil Kaur, who is sitting there in the first meeting. And this will keep the facility honest. It'll make sure it meets the objectives that Margetta was talking about. And it'll provide an overview of the pipeline. Of course, it can't get involved in the details, but it'll provide an overview, geographical, thematic, to make sure that the thing works the way we want it to. Next slide, please. So let's get to the practical examples. I think this is what you've all been waiting to see. Next slide. So the Tanga Water Infrastructure Green Revenue Bond is a 10-year bond. It'll be $23 million. It'll finance Tanga City's water supply improvements, which will give basically drinking water from a tap to many households that have never had this before. And for those that use standpipes, it will also provide water of drinkable quality at scale in standpipes around the city. It will double the water capacity, and it's going to be listed on the Dar es Salaam Stock Exchange as a green bond, and it spearheads the domestic capital market development. And the president of Tanzania has referred to this once or twice at here, and I had the privilege of meeting her a couple of years ago, and she saw the problem that Margetta talked about, that we actually have to find a new way to do this. And in the budget speech, the Minister of Finance, the budget speech for 2022 said, we're going to start a domestic capital market bond for infrastructure finance. So now we're moving forward. Next slide. Essentially, it will renovate this existing system, bring it up to speed. It will use technologies like smart tubing so that if there's a leak, you know immediately where the leak is. It will use digital payment meters so that the revenue is coming in to repay. It's not going to be expensive. It's not going to overburden the customers. It will use anchor customers like hospitals, schools, and businesses that will also be able to pay for water at scale. Next slide, please. And here it is. This is the certificate of the green bond. This was a lot of work, but we have the certificate is there. It is a green bond, the first ever infrastructure green bond in Tanzania. Next slide. And this is how far we've got. So bankability, preliminary approval, hiring of the technical advisor, structuring the guarantee. We have actually already got a guarantee note from the IFC, and we have a guarantee note from Garantco. So there's 2 guarantee notes already in place. The green bond certification has taken place, the documentation. There's been an investor roadshow with domestic pension funds and other investors. The approval by Ministry of Water is secured, and I met the Minister of Finance at this meeting. And essentially, I think it'll be before the end of the year, the Minister of Finance will sign off, and then the IPO, and it will be launched. So what we've been discussing, I mentioned this guarantee facility that's coming up. If this is launched before the guarantee is available, the government of Tanzania intends to take this experiment to Arusha, Mwanza, and a couple of other places, and then replicate it so we can really build a market, because one transaction does not make a market. And we are engaged with the European Union at this stage on the technical assistance. So there is engagement from the EU even at this stage. So this very important that we accelerate and launch at COP next year to really take this forwards. Next slide. So the other bond that was mentioned by Margetta was the Blue Peace bond. So this is extremely interesting. You see here the Gambia River. Now, this river actually, 4 separate countries have tributaries flowing into this river, and it's a resource. It's a water basin resource. How then to manage it collectively, how they can pool their sovereign guarantees to some extent, be complemented by this guarantee facility. And then one of the countries, Guinea, is going to have a hydropower dam, but that's going to benefit everybody. And it'll benefit the cities, the local governments. It'll enable the water to flow in to be able to provide the kind of thing you saw in Tanga. It's a very transformative project because of the 4-country collaboration around the launching of this. It's be the first in Africa. The ministers at a meeting last month of the 4 countries, Senegal, Gambia, Guinea, Guinea-Bissau, signed off. I think the ambassador is very well aware of those negotiations. And we're currently finalizing the financial model. So the next slide, please. So it's going to be around about $100 million, maybe in euros or maybe in local currency on the Abidjan Stock Exchange, which I think would be a very interesting example following the one of Tanzania. And the SEB Bank have been hired as lead advisor. So SEB Bank, very interesting institution. They're from Sweden. You may or may not know that SEB Bank, with the World Bank about 15 years ago, launched the first ever green bond. And they were the ones who designed the green bond. They're the ones who produced that green bond model. Now, what we've been talking to SEB Bank about in this case is whether we can do something else innovative and use some of the forestry and the nature assets of this region to put alongside the guarantee and to somehow monetize those nature assets. That's one of the things that we've been discussing together with SEB Bank, and I know the government is very happy to see that. And then that would be very interesting from Margetta's perspective, because you would actually have, nature assets alongside the guarantee facility, which would be an amazing thing. I know time is running, and we'd like to get to the panelists. So that's the Blue Peace bond. Next slide, please. Now, this one is in the Jordan Valley. We probably don't have much time to discuss this here, but this is a local economic development project which is coming up. And of course, it's in a valley which is extremely conflict related right now. So this would require a lot of political will to make it happen, but it would really, on the Jordanian side of the river, at the site that is supposed to be where Jesus was actually baptized, it would provide a kind of a local development hub. So again, around the water, but other elements coming in too. Next slide, please. We can still move on to the next slide. Oh, maybe no, maybe go back, because I'm so sorry. So you can see we're looking at the 3 types of guarantee there. A portfolio guarantee, a municipal bond guarantee, or a light industry. So it'll all depend on what is the most transformative. Next slide, please. Now, this is a one in Nakhon Sawan in Thailand. And there are some similarities with what we're looking at in Indonesia, in the city of Banyumas, to try to support waste management, whether it wastewater or plastic disposal, plastic recycling. So this one is wastewater with Banyumas in Indonesia. We're looking at plastic recycling and how to monetize that. And in all cases, what we're looking for are the investments that are a scalable model that can then be replicated by others and go to scale. And that's the whole point of this, not to finance a one-off, but something that can be replicated and go to scale. Next slide, please. So the next steps. So Margetta explained very well the phases, but we'd like then possibly to expand the size. We've been talking to Sweden. It may be that others would like to come in because we need to, if we can make this work, to build a model. So this is blue sky thinking here. We're going to implement what has been in the documentation, but we need to look to the future, create this model for risk sharing on sustainable green urban investments, and to mainstream these kind of non-sovereign urban financing vehicles, mobilize billions for sustainable city infrastructure, and realize the objectives of the Malaga Coalition for a financial ecosystem that works for cities and local governments. So that is the plan. Now, to discuss it, whether it's going to work or not, I'm going to invite the panelists. So please take your seats. Thank you. So first, Professor Nyong'o, you're the governor of Kisumu County in Kenya. It's a large county with a large city. You have been at the forefront of the thinking behind the African Territorial Investment Agency, which is looking to expand this sub-sovereign finance across Africa. But you are a local government leader with a lot of problems. How will this facility, or could this facility, help you?
Oh, thank you very much, David. First, I came to celebrate because in the note that you sent us, you said the objective of this high-level event is to celebrate and discuss the progress of the EFSD plus Global Guarantee Facility for Sustainable Cities on the sidelines of COP28. And from what I've heard from the two of you, we are celebrating. Because in Kenya, we have a very highly developed, devolved system of government. We have a national government and 47 counties. And our constitution says we have 48 governments, 47 counties, and one national government, separate but interdependent. Nonetheless, in the same constitution assigns functions and responsibilities to counties. And the constitution also guarantees a division of revenue between the national government and the counties. The truth is that it never actually works that way. Even when Parliament passes the division of revenue, money to come to counties to do that. One area that suffers most is infrastructure, because infrastructure is expensive to invest in. And when you do not develop infrastructure in local government, then you are in problems. First, because many people move into local government in urban centers and cities very fast. You know the rate. And they say that Africa is going to be the most urbanized continent by the year 2050. So you have to deal with this incoming population in terms of housing, water, and now, of course, with climate change, establishing green cities and green urban centers, which requires even more imagination and more capital investment. And that is why, with UCLGA, we thought about this in a meeting in Nairobi and decided to establish something called the African Territorial Investment Agency, in which local governments would be, as it were, shareholders as a special purpose vehicle for accessing investment funds for local governments. But now we have two willing partners who are even running faster than us. And so when we came here today, David, and thank you very much for emphasizing that I come. I was in another meeting somewhere else, but I think it has been very useful. What I would say is the following. Let us move forward first, working together. As I sit here, I was supposed to be in India with the president, heading a group of governors from the Lake Region Economic Bloc, a block of 14 counties with 14 million people. And what we want to do is build a railway line to connect the counties. Of course, it's a dream, it's a vision, it's an aspiration, but we need capital. So the Indian Railway Corporation is ready to do it, but we don't know where the money is going to come from. And this is where you come in. So this is a discussion I think we shall carry from here. One, between ATIA and yourselves. I'm glad you are a key player in the formation of ATIA. And two, between ATIA yourselves and us at the Lake Region Economic Bloc to see how we can finance this very important infrastructure project, among others, but I just mentioned that. But as I said at the beginning, I'm happy that we're celebrating and not discussing. I was really happy when you made your presentation that this is no longer just an idea, but an idea whose time has come. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Professor. And Indeed, we're working with you and others on ATIA, and I was able to meet the CEO of the Development Bank of Southern Africa a couple of days ago, together with Parks Tau, who many of you know is the minister responsible for local government in South Africa and the leader of the local government movement, a former president of UCLG. And we discussed this. We discussed how the Guarantee Facility for Sustainable Cities could support DBSA in hosting the ATIA. And the ATIA is an amazing idea. It'll be a kind of bank of cities where they will put some money in and they will therefore have a stake. So the Development Bank of Southern Africa may host it potentially. And this can really be a way to bring about these innovative institutions. And so we look forward to taking this up with the Development Bank of Southern Africa. And they're a good institution to work with because in South Africa itself, they already do some of this stuff. But outside of South Africa, you don't find it until the one that we're trying to do now in Tanzania. So hopefully we can take that forwards to other countries. We're also talking to national development banks. My next speaker I'd like to introduce is Edwin Syahuzat, who is the president director of PT Sarana Multi-Infrastructure in Indonesia. Now, this is a subnational investment bank owned by the government, but that has a view to lend and to work with cities. There are many such institutions. We've worked with one in Bangladesh called the Bangladesh Development and Municipal Bank. There's one in Nepal called the Town Development Bank. There's one in Cameroon called FACOM. They are all over the place, but they very rarely manage to do what they were established to do and lend to cities. Why do you not manage to do that? And how could this guarantee facility help you deliver your mandate? Over to you.
Thank you very much, David. Perhaps let me provide you with the context of what PTSMI is doing right now. In addition to just lending to local government, because we obtained mandate to lending to local government since 2015. And before that, 2009, we were established, and we are actually an infrastructure development bank at the beginning. And our first initial mandate is to promote PPPs. So on top of approximate 3 billion commitment facility that we have developed to lend to local government, we have also an approximate number of $7 billion equivalent lending to corporate, to private in the context of PPPs, Indonesia PPPs. So I think, of course, cities, local government play a critical role in facing climate challenges. And of course, Indonesia is an archipelago country. So some region are also prone to climate risk. Yeah, and from what we learn, yeah, from lending to local government, I think framework is very important. Yeah, let's say we provide lending to water utility company under local government. I think it is also important to identify the whole cycle, yeah, of water utility company works, starting from, I think, the dam, the security of supply, and the production, and the challenges at the downstream, yeah, with regard to the connection and everything like that. So some projects, yeah, some what we learn from, let's say, a PPP cross subnational level, which is actually securing the availability of raw water for the water utility company. I think coordination and multi-stakeholder is very important. And for that things, yeah, I think Indonesia is also quite advanced in terms of institutional arrangement, whereby there is infrastructure guarantee fund facility, which is operated under the MOF. And they are also providing a kind of political risk guarantee in such way, a PPP projects like tackling the upstream, yeah, can be introduced to the market and attract investors and of course, private lenders. That is one cases, yeah, that guarantee can perform and create a project. The other, I think, from our experience, is to unlock the potential of subnational finance. I think we are among the volunteer, yeah, the prime mover of the subnational finance development, because we are also supported by the World Bank in their program in 2015, namely Regional Infrastructure Development Finance Facility, whereby World Bank was providing us with concessional money through government. It was a two-step loan to MOF and to us, and we can create an ecosystem of subnational finance here in Indonesia. I think to be able local government to have access, yeah, to finance on top of their reliance, their heavy reliance on their budget and transfer. Bear in mind, in Indonesia context, decentralization is relatively new. It introduced post Suharto era in the year of 2000, and since that, I think many local government has a quite diversified in terms of their fiscal space, and some region we can see also, you can see, yeah, the contrast between like Jakarta, the very advanced region and fiscal independence, and some region in Papua which heavily rely on transfer to central government. And to give you a context, I think from the central government budget, 1/3 of the central government is actually transferred to local government. So our existence, yeah, of unlocking subnational finance is also aim, yeah, to make spending quality better at local government. And for this, I think we welcome, yeah, any financial innovation that can open up the market for subnational finance. More importantly, I think for a sustainable future, sustainable cities. And I think specifically for sustainable cities, I will address that this is not an easy project, yeah. So we need the collaboration, yeah, to be able to provide solution for that. And I welcome for any exploration that can perhaps, yeah, also include PTSMI and co-sharing, yeah? Not only the final stage of financing, but also on the preparation stage, including we made a good progress with regard to the clustering of Indonesia local government fiscal ability, whereby we can cluster which part is the rich country, a rich subnational, medium, and low income subnational. And this is very relevant to the risk of the local government when it comes to the solution for climate projects and of course the climate finance. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I like the way you talked about transfers and about own source revenue and financial management capacity. Because you saw in the slide, we talked about the Malaga Coalition for a financial ecosystem for local finance. So this includes things like the local climate adaptive living facility that were mentioned earlier, which is basically a way of saying that fiscal transfers to local level is one of the best ways to deliver adaptation finance, because all adaptation is inherently local. And there's an inherent cost to adaptation that local governments are suffering. So how to get things like adaptation finance, maybe potentially loss and damage finance, down to the local level, Locale provides a mechanism. And then for larger projects, we're hoping that this type of facility can provide a mechanism. But it all has to be joined up, because unless you can well manage the transfers, you're not going to be able to manage this either. So we hope to build this ecosystem of subnational finance through these different instruments in partnership with the EU and under Team Europe initiatives as far as possible. So that's really the system we're working on. And I'd now like to give the floor to His Excellency Lamin Diba, who is the permanent representative of Gambia to the UN and is in a very interesting position on this panel, because His Excellency has been working very closely with some of the other mechanisms we've talked about, including the climate finance through transfers, and has also been, in his capacity as a previous post as Minister of Environment of the Gambia, instrumental in bringing forward the Blue Peace Bond, and also in working on the 4-country collaboration network that will enable this Blue Peace Bond to go ahead. But most importantly, of all of those things, His Excellency is passionate about local governments and local government finance. And there's not that many of those you find at the UN as permanent representatives. So the floor is yours, Your Excellency.
Thank you. Thank you, David. Perhaps I start with where you just ended. I believe that in any development process, you have to go through the ladder. If you miss the steps, if you miss the building blocks, which is local economic development at the local level, that's for local economic development at the regional level, at the city level, at the municipality level, then that can spur national economic development. And I think this is something that my able governor here can attest to. Without that, and what I like what he mentioned, the relationship between the center and the local is very critical sometimes. The laws may be there to provide for fiscal transfers, but in actual fact, how does it happen? This is due primarily, it's not the fault of the central government sometimes, but because it's due to high fiscal tightness. The fiscal space is not there for them to support all the economic development facets of the economy. And then they have to develop priorities. Now, local governments are so critical in building that bridge between the communities and the central government. So this is very crucial. Now, the way this guarantee facility is designed, for me, I said it at the advisory council meeting, this is like music to my ears. Because what this would do is to free up more fiscal space to allow national governments to be able to reinvest in those sectors that may be in cities, despite you have common but differentiated roles by the central and the local. if that is done, that means that in most of the mega projects that we initiate in government, sometimes you are asked to national sovereignty guarantee. And this is where we have a lot of problem with ministries of finance. And now the way I see this bond, this guarantee facility is going to defray that and free, in a sense, yes, is going to defray the national government from taking those commitments and, putting the resources directly down to the people. Let me give you an example. You look at the local, for instance. When we started the local in the Gambia, we worked in 34 districts. It creates jobs. It creates alternative economic opportunity for local people to adapt to climate, and that enhance their capacity and enhance their resilience. So if we are able to extend that to the 4 countries that belongs to the OMVG, that is the Gambia River Basin, which I'm glad David, UNCDF and the European Union, African Development Bank, World Bank, the German Development, GIZ, you all contributed to put in the infrastructure, which costed us about $722 million. But now the fundamental question is, how do we manage this infrastructure? The long-term sustainability of this. And I think that is why you are guaranteeing some of these, the Saltino, for instance. When you do that, what that brings is it creates revenue for that council, that local municipality, but also it supports the national government by honoring their obligations to their multilateral environment agreements, that is particularly the Paris Agreement. That is by having green energy. But now the challenge that we are faced with, David, you may be aware that when we have the Keleta Dam in Guinea, we have the Suapiti Dam in Guinea, we also have the biggest dam to be constructed, which is Sambangalo Dam, but the 2 belongs to Guinea. But they have agreed to share the energy with the other 3 countries, which is marvelous, and we commend that magnanimity of the Guinea government. But the point I'm trying to emphasize here is, we believe that regional approach to development pay more dividend to vulnerable communities, vulnerable societies, and bring economic development to the communities, particularly the integrated approach that we have with the OMVG. Now, the other thing that I had you mention and David mention, that I have been, since I was minister, trying to see what instrument, what mechanism can I have to do a natural resource capital mapping that can serve as a guarantee, because these resources have values. When we do these resources, we quantify them, monetize them, and we can say, yes, we have this number of tons of gold, this number of farmlands, forests, especially in Guinea-Bissau. What we experienced there was the compensation for the environmental safeguards was highest in the region because they have a lot of cashew farms that were valued. So you can see that the natural resource capital can serve as a complement, as a supplement to the existing mechanism to support local governments to access resources that can leverage local economic development at their level, but that can spur national economic development for sustainable development. And that can allow us, least developed countries, African countries, to be able to, we are 7 years away from the target of SDGs. And I'm glad that you are supporting providing water, quality water, education, health. These are issues that local councils are suffering, and they are struggling as the governor said, infrastructure is key for effective communication between the center and the locals. So, David, thank you so much. I believe we will take this nature thing very seriously and put it in the equation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. So I think we're in the right place because SEB Bank did the first green bond, and we'll be working with them on the nature assets. Thank you, Mojet. Thank you. And I think we're looking as far as possible to make these things across as Team Europe initiatives, working with other European partners so that we can actually kind of bring others in to make it happen. So I'm looking forward to this. We actually have time for questions. It's rare, I know, but we have 5 minutes left. Would anybody like to ask a question to any one of the panelists, please? Or comment even, please, the floor is yours. Just to introduce yourself and then ask your question. Thank you.
Yeah, I come from the county government of Kisumu, where the governor is the president. I have this question for the president of PTSMI. You said that you have two very important roles besides this one of supporting or lending to local governments. You also promote PPPs, which is basically private sector based, and you have a 7 billion fund into it. In your experience, in these 4 years that you've had the mandate of supporting these private sectors, what's your experience about the uptake of PPPs, and what is the private sector outlook to this model of financing? Are they receptive to it, or do they have a challenge? And how many projects have you supported within the 7 billion funding that you have? And the second question is having the mandate of supporting local governments, and you've had this mandate for 8 years. What would you say has been the impact of your support to local governments in terms of lending? And can you quantify, the percentage of local development growth that you have seen under this framework? Thank you.
Yeah, I think with regard to PPPs, yeah, the most important thing is the contracting agency who are the owners of the projects. Yeah, in Indonesia, PPP law, yeah, there are two contracting agencies, central government or local government. For such, I can tell the advanced sectors, yeah, like toll road, electricity, whereby the contracting agencies is local, central government. I think PPP is quite advanced because they are framework, regulation. There are, I think, financing framework, how PPP flows, yeah, and how can we get into government support. And there is also institutional arrangement that I mentioned before. There is a guarantee facility provided by MOF, viability gap funding, even project development facilitation. Yeah, I think toll road is the most advanced sector. Not mentioning even Java is now interconnected with the toll road, and even investors, yeah, from around the world, yeah, is seeking toll road as an asset class in Indonesia, including I think ADIA, yeah, Abu Dhabi Investment Authority. Second, I think electricity, but electricity is also important. But Indonesia is now conducting an energy transition mechanism whereby we are creating a framework and a roadmap to energy transition. So unlocking private investment is also key. We now designing what we call it the government support for energy transition. I think all in all, framework and government support is very important. The last part, yeah, I think is PPP under the authority of local government. Yeah, I can say that water utility company, yeah, local transport company. This is not an easy project, yeah, from our experience, because sometimes there is a capacity gap, there is a lack of framework, And even though there is a government support in there, but project with sub-national scale is quite difficult, because the scale is not that sizable in such way. Big investors are interested, So that I seriously, I would prefer unlocking sub-national finance, rather than introducing small-scale PPP at the sub-national level. Absolutely, the cost of obtaining. So that's why I attended this forum and would like to explore, about sub-national access to finance on top of our previous experience, with regard to PPP at the sub-national. Thank you.
No, thank you. And we will explore. And I think following this meeting, we can, of course, connect you up with our team in Jakarta. And I fully accept this the request to work with you very closely on this, because I think together, local governments have a unique issues, but it's not yet recognized by national governments that they are the solution. They are not part of the problem. They are there. They are the solution. And that's where I think we need to get to. I see there is one more. I'm looking at do we have time for one more question? Is there another meeting waiting to start? We have time. PS, the Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Local Government, Uganda. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. My comment is on the panelists from Indonesia. I'm from Uganda, and Uganda, since independence, we only had one capital city because we thought we would put in all facilities. 40 years down the road, we didn't. So we created 10 young cities now, 2 years ago, and then 31 municipalities. So my question is, Indonesia has done a lot of things. Would you be ready to come and partner with us? We are so virgin ready to partner with anybody. So can I go with you to Kampala now and we do some partnership? Thank you.
Of course, I think with the help of ADB and World Bank, there are many similar institutions, from Bangladesh, Pakistan, and Asia, come to our office and conducted collaboration, So that I think we also, as a relatively young, development institution, we keep learning and we keep collaborating with partners. Very welcome. If you can develop a collaboration, concrete collaboration, and we are basically institution that are pushed, pressed by our minister, to showcasing something, as a development solution, in many ways, So I think showcase and concrete delivery is something that we are always, be target upon. Thank you.
Maybe one thing we can do, thank you for that, and thank you for that request. And maybe one thing we can do out of this initiative is develop a network of these institutions, similar institutions, because there is one in Cameroon called FACOM. They're not here, but they're looking to do similar things. There is the PTSMI of Indonesia. There is DBSA in South Africa. But not that many. But there's one in Nepal called the Town Development Fund. But again, they almost managed to do it, but there was legal issues, etc., etc. I know there's something in Bangladesh called the Bangladesh Municipal Development and Lending Fund, but they haven't yet to make a single loan, even though that is their name. So let's pull these things together. And I think PTSMI is one of the leaders in this field, in fact. And we could have maybe at the next Malaga meeting, a specific conference of these national development banks that have a vocation or a purpose to unlock this subnational finance with local governments. There's maybe 5 or 6 of them around the world that really are trying to do it. So let's bring them together. And then countries that are interested in this experience, Uganda should also be there. We work with the Tanzania Investment Bank. We want to push them in that direction, but they have not yet gone that far. So you can also be an inspiration for them. So thank you, Permanent Secretary, for this inspirational way to end the meeting. And I can see people are kind of hovering there. We may have another meeting scheduled soon, even now. So thank you, everybody. I really appreciate your time. I'm sorry? Oh, I'm so sorry.
I was just going to invite my my brother from Uganda. We are just a boat ride away from you. Maybe we could compare some notes. But on a much more serious issue, I think you are very much in the similar position we are in Kenya. We are very busy creating municipalities and asking the question, how are you going to finance it? I think if you could talk more about ATIA, African Territorial Investment Agency, this is something that we share in common, that we could compare notes and see how to strengthen it. David has been very supportive, so he's ready to join the discourse.
Absolutely. So ATIA, meeting of local development banks, this is a great outcome. And of course, let's celebrate the first ever Sustainable City Guarantee Fund. Thank you very much.